I stood alone at a podium holding 1 year of sobriety in my hand. My family was 3 miles away toasting champagne at my sister's anniversary dinner. My name is Guinevere, and I found out exactly where they'd been the moment I checked my phone after the meeting ended. 3 weeks later, they called asking me to pay for my brother's rehab stay. This story does not slow down. Stay with me. Fast context, because I'm not slowing down to give it to you. I'd been sober for 364 days when this story starts. The hardest year of my entire life by a wide margin. Built one single day at a time out of meetings, a sponsor who answered her phone at 3 a.m. more than once, and a specific, exhausting daily discipline that nobody who hasn't lived through early recovery can fully understand from the outside. My 1 year chip ceremony, the kind of milestone recovery communities treat as genuinely significant, a real, formal marker of survival, was scheduled 6 weeks in advance at my home group, the exact date and time shared with my entire family the day I found out. My sister Rosalind's 10th wedding anniversary dinner, announced roughly 3 weeks later, landed on the exact same evening. I want you to sit with that collision for 1 second before I keep moving, because I didn't get to sit with it at all when I first noticed the conflict. I called my mother immediately. "Oh no, that's a bummer," she said. "But the anniversary dinner's already booked at that fancy place, and Rosalind's been looking forward to it for months. I'm sure the meeting thing will still mean just as much even if we're not all there, right? It's not like it's a big public thing." I want to describe what the meeting thing cost me to hear, standing in my own kitchen, about the single hardest, most significant year of my adult life, reduced in one sentence to something smaller and more private than a restaurant reservation. I want to move fast through what happened next, because the story doesn't slow down there either. I walked into that meeting with my sponsor, Delphine, and the small, steady community of people who'd walked every single day of that year alongside me. No one from my own family. I want to describe the specific quality of that room. Folding chairs, bad coffee, the particular kind of quiet dignity that a chip ceremony carries in recovery spaces, because everyone in that room understands exactly what a year actually costs. My sponsor called my name. I walked to the front. I said the words you say, grateful, still standing, one day at a time. And I looked out at a room full of people who understood exactly what this moment meant, and not one single person who shared my blood. I found out, checking my phone the moment the meeting ended, exactly where my family had been instead. A photo Rosalind posted from the restaurant, candlelight, a bottle of wine, my mother's arm around her, captioned with something warm about 10 wonderful years, posted at almost the exact minute I was walking up to that podium 3 miles away. I want to move fast through the following 3 weeks, because the story doesn't slow down there either. Then my mother called. "Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to talk to you about something difficult. Your brother's really struggling again, and we found a good rehab program, but insurance won't cover the full stay. We thought, since you understand this world now and you're doing so well financially, you might be able to help cover the difference." 3 weeks. 3 weeks after standing alone at a podium marking the hardest year of my life, I was being asked to fund my brother's treatment. Treatment for the same disease I'd just spent a year clawing my way out of, largely alone, while my family celebrated an anniversary dinner instead of showing up for me. "You want me to pay for Desmond's rehab," I said. 3 weeks after nobody came to my 1 year chip because you were at Rosalind's anniversary dinner. Silence. The specific silence of someone genuinely not having connected those two facts until I said them out loud in the same sentence. "That's different," my mother said. "This is actually serious, honey. Desmond could die if he doesn't get help." I want to describe what that sentence did to me, because I think it's the single most devastating line in this entire story. This is actually serious. As though the year I'd just survived, the meetings, the sleepless nights, the specific daily war against a disease that could have just as easily killed me too, had been something less than serious, something that didn't require the same urgency, the same presence, the same willingness to rearrange a dinner reservation. I want to move fast through what I said next, because I didn't hesitate. It was serious for me too. I could have died too. I didn't, because I did the work, alone, for 365 days, and you couldn't show up for 1 hour of it. I did, eventually, help my brother, not by paying for his treatment directly, but by connecting him with my own sponsors network, by sitting with him for one difficult, honest conversation about what recovery actually requires, by offering exactly the kind of present, sustained support I'd needed and hadn't received a month earlier. I declined to pay for the rehab stay itself, a boundary, I want to be honest, was one of the hardest I've ever held, because every instinct in me wanted to fix this for him the way no one had shown up to help fix anything for me. I want to back up now and give you the fuller shape of this, because the speed of that opening is exactly how it felt living through it, and I think you deserve the rest of it at the same pace. I want to describe what that year of early sobriety actually looked like, because I think it matters to understanding exactly what that chip ceremony represented. The first 90 days were, without exaggeration, some of the hardest of my entire life. Physical withdrawal, a level of raw, exposed emotional vulnerability I hadn't felt since childhood, the specific terror of learning to exist in the world without the one coping mechanism I'd relied on for over a decade. I attended meetings nearly every single day for the first 6 months. I called my sponsor, Delphine, more times at 3 in the morning than I can count, sitting on my bathroom floor, white-knuckling my way through cravings that felt, in those early months, like they might actually kill me if I let them win. I want to describe what my family knew about all of this, because I think it matters. They knew everything, in broad strokes. My mother had driven me to my first intake appointment. Rosalind had, more than once, told me how proud she was of how I was handling everything. Language that, in hindsight, feels like exactly the kind of comfortable, hands-off admiration that lets a person feel involved without ever actually having to show up when it counts most. I want to describe the specific significance of a one-year chip in recovery culture because I don't think it's widely understood outside these rooms. It's not a small thing. It's not a private, low-key milestone. It's a genuine, communal marking of survival, one that recovery communities treat with real weight precisely because the statistics on early sobriety are sobering. A significant percentage of people don't make it to a year at all, and the ones who do have typically fought harder for that milestone than for almost anything else in their adult lives. I want to describe the meeting itself in more detail because I think the specific loneliness of it matters. Delphine sat beside me. Several other members of my home group, people who'd watched me white-knuckle my way through the hardest months of that year, sat around the room, genuinely, warmly present. And an entire section of my own understanding of family, the people I'd hoped, specifically, months in advance, would be there to witness this exact moment, simply wasn't. I want to tell you what Delphine said when she handed me that chip, because I've held on to it since as one of the only genuinely warm parts of that entire evening. A year ago, you didn't believe you'd make it to this room today. I want you to remember that every single person in here believed it, even on the days you didn't. I cried, standing at that podium, grieving, even in that genuinely proud moment. The family members who weren't there to witness it. I want to describe checking my phone after the meeting, because the compressed version doesn't capture how completely surreal it was. I sat in my car in the meeting hall parking lot, scrolling through Rosalind's anniversary post, candlelight and wine, trying to reconcile the version of that exact evening I'd just lived through with the version my family had apparently been living through simultaneously, 3 miles away, entirely unaware, or entirely unconcerned, that anything more significant was happening anywhere else. I want to tell you about the weeks that followed, because they mattered enormously to how the rest of this story unfolded. I didn't say anything dramatic in the moment. I was too consumed with the actual, exhausting work of simply continuing to stay sober, day by day, the way you have to regardless of what else is happening around you. But I want to be honest that something in me had shifted, quietly and permanently, sitting in that car in the parking lot. I want to give you the fuller version of that phone call from my mother, because the compressed version doesn't capture how completely disconnected her tone was from everything I was still processing. Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to talk to you about something difficult. A genuine pause, real concern in her voice this time. Concern I hadn't heard from her about my own recovery even once during that entire preceding year. Your brother's really struggling again, and we found a good rehab program, but insurance won't cover the full stay. We thought, since you understand this world now and you're doing so well financially, you might be able to help cover the difference. I want to describe the specific quality of my own silence in that moment, because it wasn't calculated. It was genuine, disbelieving grief, trying to process the sheer scale of the disconnect between the concern I was hearing for Desmond and the complete absence of that same concern for my own year of survival just 3 weeks earlier. I want to describe the conversation that followed in more detail because it revealed, layer by layer, exactly how my family had processed, or failed to process, what they'd actually done. My mother's response to my pushback was, I want to be honest, one of the most painful parts of this entire story because it revealed a specific, unspoken hierarchy I hadn't fully let myself see before. Desmond's crisis, still unfolding, still uncertain in outcome, registered to my family as urgent and serious in a way that my own completed year, because I had, after all, survived it, apparently no longer did, as though danger only counted as real while it was still actively threatening someone, and became retroactively less significant the moment a person made it through. I want to tell you about the conversation I eventually had with Rosalind directly, about a week later, because it was, in its own way, the most clarifying one of the entire ordeal. I asked her plainly whether she'd ever considered, once she learned the dates conflicted, moving her anniversary dinner even by a single night. Her answer, delivered with what I could tell was genuine, if belated, discomfort. I didn't think it would be that big a deal to you. You seemed so steady about the whole recovery thing. I figured you'd understand. You always handle stuff like this so well. You always handle stuff like this so well. I want to sit with that phrase because I think it's the specific detail that reframed my entire understanding of my family's baseline assumptions about me. A genuine, if apparently sincere, belief that my visible competence at surviving something devastating meant I required less witness support through it, rather than more. I declined to pay for Desmond's rehab stay. I want to be honest that this was, in some ways, one of the hardest boundaries I've set with my family, because it required me to hold firm against both a lifetime of learned instinct to fix things for my siblings and the genuine, real fear that my brother's life might actually be at stake. I found a middle path instead, connecting him with resources, showing up for the hard conversations, offering exactly the kind of present, sustained support that I hadn't received a month earlier, without financially absorbing a crisis my parents were, in fact, capable of funding themselves. I want to tell you about the months since, because they've required significant, ongoing work to renegotiate what my relationship with my family actually looks like going forward. I've stayed in therapy alongside my continued recovery work, specifically to process not just the ongoing daily discipline sobriety requires, but the compounding grief of realizing that my own survival had, apparently, registered to my family as less urgent than my brother's crisis, simply because I'd made it through mine without visibly, publicly nearly dying in front of them. I think, more than anything, about standing at that podium, chip in hand, scanning a room full of genuinely present strangers who understood exactly what that year had cost me, and how completely the absence of my own family in that room told me something about my place in this family that I'm not sure I would have let myself see so clearly any other way. It's been about a year and a half now since that chip ceremony. I recently marked 2.5 years sober. My relationship with my mother and Rosalind remains genuinely strained, still working through the same kind of slow, difficult renegotiation of expectations that I imagine anyone who's finally stopped absorbing a lifetime pattern silently has to go through. Desmond, I'm glad to tell you, is doing well in his own recovery now, and our relationship has actually grown closer through the process, the one genuinely positive thread to emerge from an otherwise painful chapter. If you've ever survived the hardest year of your life essentially alone, only to be asked, weeks later, to fund someone else's crisis without any acknowledgement of your own, I want to hear about it. Some things you only understand once you've celebrated your own survival in an empty room.